Everybody, I call the meeting to order. Thank you for everybody for bearing with us as we had the votes and staying with us, and much appreciated for our witnesses. Welcome to meeting number 19, the House of Commons Standing Committee on Government Operations and Estimates. Today, the committee will be meeting, continuing its study on defence procurement projects and its study of national shipbuilding strategy. The committee will be considering each study separately. The study of the national shipbuilding strategy will be discussed during the first hour, and the study of air defence procurement projects will be discussed during the second hour. Those witnesses discussing the national shipbuilding strategy will make an opening statement of 5 minutes maximum at the start of the first hour. After that, the rest of the hour will be taken up with questions from the members. Those witnesses appearing as part of the air defence procurement project study will have an opening statement of 5 minutes maximum at the start of the second hour. After that, the rest of the hour will be taken up with questions from the members. The committee has the expectation that all witnesses will be open about any potential conflict of interest that they may have. This is to ensure that the committee can fully understand the context of the testimony it is about to receive. If you feel your testimony may be colored by a previous or current interest, I invite the witnesses to disclose this during their opening statements. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of November 25, 2021. Members are attending in person in the room or remotely using the Zoom application. Regarding the speaking list, the committee clerk and I will do our best that we can maintain the consolidated order of speaking for all members, whether participating virtually or in person. I'd like to take this opportunity to remind all participants at this meeting that screenshots or taking photos of your screens is not permitted. Given the ongoing pandemic situation, in light of the recommendation of the public health authorities, as well as the directive of the Board of Internal Economy on October 19, 2021, to remain healthy and safe, the following is recommended to all those attending the meeting in person. Anyone with symptoms should participate by Zoom and not attend the meeting. Everyone must maintain 2-meter physical distancing, whether seated or standing. Everyone must wear a non-medical mask when circulating the room. It is recommended in the strongest possible terms that members wear their masks at all times, including when seated. Non-medical masks, which provide better clarity over cloth masks, are available in the room. Everyone present must maintain proper hand hygiene by using the hand sanitizer at the room entrance. Committee rooms are cleaned before and after each meeting. However, to maintain this, everyone is encouraged to clean the surfaces such as their desks, their chairs, or their microphones with the provided disinfectant wipes when vacating or taking a seat. As the chair, I will be encouraging these measures for the duration of the meeting, and I thank members in advance for your cooperation. I'd like to welcome the witnesses and invite them to make their first opening statements. We'll start with the Canadian Association of Defence and Security Industries and then hear from Irving Shipbuilding. By all means. There we go.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. In my opening remarks, I'd like to give you a Canadian defence industry perspective on the National Shipbuilding Strategy, or NSS. When the government unveiled the NSS over a decade ago, the core principle was that the recapitalization of the Royal Canadian Navy and the Canadian Coast Guard would be carried out in Canada. The objectives behind the principle are twofold. One, to bring predictability to federal vessel procurement, and two, to end the boom and bust cycles that have characterized Canadian shipbuilding in the past. Together, the result would be a sustainable long-term shipbuilding plan that benefits the Royal Canadian Navy and Coast Guard, the Canadian marine industry, and the Canadian economy. CADSE, Canadian Association of Defence and Security Industries, and myself as its CEO and president, fully support the basic principles and the objectives of the NSS, and we have done so since its inception. Canada is a maritime nation with the largest coastline in the world at over 243,000 kilometers, including mainland coasts and offshore islands. That is 6 times Russia's coastline, 12 times the United States coastline, and 16 times the coastline of China. It's therefore a matter of common sense from a national security perspective that Canada needs a sustainable domestic naval and Coast Guard shipbuilding industry. The economics of shipbuilding in Canada are also sound. Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada has an economic model for the marine industry based on established Statistics Canada input-output multipliers. On average, $1 million of signed NSS contracts contributes $1.3 million to the GDP and 12 jobs to the Canadian economy. In the most recent StatsCan ISED survey of the state of Canada's defense industry, we see meaningful growth in the defense industry in 2020 during the pandemic, a good portion of which is attributable to the NSS work really starting to take off. There are those who say that Canada shouldn't be in the naval shipbuilding industry and that we should buy our vessels offshore and off the shelf. There is no such thing as off the shelf in this business. Canada will be buying tailor-made ships as we have done in the past and as other countries do. Moreover, Canada has a long history in naval shipbuilding. The last two major Canadian naval vessel procurements, the Iroquois class destroyer program of the 1960s and early 70s, and the Halifax class frigate program of the 80s and early 90s, were carried out in this country at Canadian shipyards and by the Canadian marine industry. Then, as now, there were controversies over these programs, particularly with the Halifax class frigate with respect to cost, schedule, and the ability of Canadian industry to deliver. Yet, Canadian industry delivered an impressive capability with the Halifax class that has served Canada and the Royal Canadian Navy for 30 years and has led to significant exports of high-value systems and technologies developed in Canada. The focus on the costs of the NSS project to date has tended to be on the visible part of the ships, namely the hull. While this is obviously important, hull construction typically accounts for only 35% of the cost of a warship. Half of the values in the platform and mission systems, and roughly another 15% in the design and systems integration. These jobs pay on average 60% more than the average manufacturing wage, and these are the jobs that employ high-wage engineers, technicians, and technologists, and they comprise 30% of the defense industry's workforce. According to studies on the Canadian marine industrial base carried out by ISED and StatsCan, Canada has significant capability in the areas of shipbuilding such as naval shipborne mission systems and components, maintenance, repair and overhaul, and simulation. Our strength in these capabilities is part of a legacy of previous naval vessel construction in this country. Foreign military buyers are less likely to purchase from Canada when our own government does not buy from our own industry. Decreasing domestic buying opportunities decreases our export potential. We should not lose sight of the possibilities to drive innovation, high-wage employment, and exports in the less visible parts of naval recapitalization. The initial acquisition phase of a contract is a smaller proportion of the costs of the life cycle of a platform, which include midlife upgrades, technology insertions, and long-term supportability. It's in these areas that Canadian industry can achieve the greatest return on investment. Cost and changing cost estimates are an ongoing issue with NSS projects that have been documented in various studies and reports over the years. This is to be expected in a strategy of this scale, complexity, and duration. The government needs to be a bit more flexible to adjust cost estimates over time as assumptions alter due to changing circumstances. Neither industry nor government have much control, if any, over the price of steel, foreign exchange rates, and other input costs and technological advancements. 2 years ago, no one would have predicted a pandemic-induced global supply shock and a war in Europe would drive inflation in Canada above 6%, its highest level by far in 30 years. And in some of the commodities and technologies used in advanced shipbuilding, inflation is now many times higher than the CPI. It is uncertainties like these that require governments to have built-in flexibilities for a project, the duration of which is measured in decades. It's also incumbent on the media, academics, other experts, and parliamentarians who comment on these programs to educate Canadians about these uncertainties rather than offering knee-jerk criticisms of the strategy. And to abandon the NSS a decade in would be, in my view, reckless on economic and national security grounds. In conclusion, as a country with 3 coastlines, a significant continental shelf, plus new challenges to its sovereignty in the Arctic, Having a first-rate Navy and Coast Guard, along with a sustainable domestic naval shipbuilding industry, should be considered a basic requirement of our sovereignty that isn't up for debate. And it's the price of admission for any G7 economy and NATO membership. The NSS, while far from perfect, provides a roadmap to that end state. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Cianfrani, and I hope I pronounced that properly. And
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll go to either Mr. Young or Mr. Mooney. 5 minutes, please.
Mooney. Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today on behalf of our over 2,000 employees at Halifax Shipyard. With me today is Kevin Young, Senior Vice President of the Canadian Surface Combatant Program. I'm a shipbuilder with 35 years' experience, including 14 at NASCO Shipyard in San Diego, where I participated in delivering 40 ships through 8 different programs. My colleague Kevin Young has senior leadership experience in nuclear submarine construction programs at BAE in the UK. We have chosen to live here in Canada because we were drawn to the great inspiration of the National Shipbuilding Strategy. I want to take this opportunity to personally invite the committee to visit the Halifax Shipyard. I'm confident that you will be pleased with what we are getting done for Canada. I know I have limited time, so my remarks will briefly address 3 main areas. First, the economic impact of the NSS. Second, the COVID impacts on the AOPS program. And thirdly, preparation for construction of CSC. Since 2011, Irving Shipbuilding has invested over $500 million into building one of the most modern indoor shipbuilding facilities in North America. In terms of core capability, the Halifax Shipyard compares quite favorably to most shipyards in North America. We have recruited and trained a world-class workforce here in Canada. Since 2012, the size of the workforce at the shipyard has more than doubled. We are now the largest employer of trade apprentices in Atlantic Canada. Positive economic impacts are being felt across the country. According to a study conducted by PricewaterhouseCoopers, for every $1 spent in Canada on shipbuilding, up to $1.3 is achieved in benefits to the national economy. These benefits are in addition to ships acquired through this investment. In another study by the Conference Board of Canada, the work at Halifax Shipyard will increase Canada's GDP by $9.8 billion from 2013 to 2024. Although COVID undeniably is impacting our operations, our workers have maintained momentum on AOPS while also conducting critical maintenance on the Halifax-class frigates. Since the pandemic started, we delivered 2 AOPS, with a third coming later this summer. We are well into production on AOPS 4 and 5 as well. HMCS Harry DeWolf was the first new ship delivered to the Navy since 1999, and last summer marked the Navy's first transit of the Northwest Passage since the 1950s. Last year, we completed a major ship repair project on HMCS Charlottetown, followed immediately by the dry docking of HMCS Ville de Quebec. This sustained tempo at the Halifax Shipyard is critical to Canada maintaining reaction forces able to respond to serious threats to global peace and security. These successes did not come easily. For over 2 years, with the impact still ongoing, COVID caused the full shutdown of production work on 3 separate occasions. To date, on AOPS, we have lost over 1 million production hours and about 15 months of schedule progress. Like most employers, we are suffering from the COVID-induced Great Resignation. Our trade's attrition rate has nearly tripled, causing a loss of learning and leaving us with a workforce that is less experienced today than it was several years ago. But we are responding. We are actively recruiting highly skilled workers, both here in Canada and worldwide, to achieve the resource levels required for increased AOPS production, increased repair workloads, and CSC. The disruptions in our global supply chain have also been significant, with increased costs and delays procuring raw materials, finished goods, and logistics. Steel, copper, and shipping costs have skyrocketed. Shipbuilders are feeling the impacts of inflation, just like everyone across Canada and the world. Turning our eye to the future, we are ready to meet the challenges on the horizon with our full energy and lessons learned from the last few years. Through Canada's program leadership, we are closing in on an agreed technical baseline and refined design solution for the Canadian Surface Combatant. In 2011, Canada was looking at a notional CSC of similar size and scale of the current Halifax-class frigates. Since that time, the actual CSC has grown in size and complexity to satisfy the Navy's operational requirements. We need a ship that will protect the nation's interest and the sailors that will take it in harm's way. We should keep in mind that shipbuilding programs, particularly CSC, are a truly national endeavor and bigger than any single company or government department. We encourage the government to apply a single point of accountability responsible for the execution of shipbuilding. This role will consolidate authority and enable difficult decisions and complex trade-offs to be made more effectively. In closing, I do hope you take me up on the offer to visit our Halifax shipyard soon so you can see the work underway and meet the Canadians working on this important project. There is a real sense of purpose at our shipyard. We are proud of our work building first-class warships for Canada. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mooney, and appreciate that, and thank you for the offer, and we are in discussion along those stages, so we will be in touch. With that said, we'll now go into questions, and we will start with Mr. Paul Hoos for 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hello, Mr. Young, Mr. Mooney. Welcome to the committee. My first question... Oh, is there an issue with the interpretation? Can you hear me? Mr. Mooney, can you hear? Great. I'll start over. So I was just welcoming you. Thank you for coming. I've visited the Irving shipyard. I was there when they were cutting the metal for the first AOPS, and I saw how it worked. But now I have a very direct question. I'd like to understand why Irving has construction costs that are exponential compared to the industry around the world. I know there are issues with COVID, but COVID has happened everywhere. It's not an increase in millions, it's in billions. And that becomes a rather important issue. Is there a reason why Irving is more expensive than everywhere else?
I would comment, first of all, that the complexity of shipbuilding and starting up a new industry cannot be underestimated. We've actually been building ships now for approximately 6 years, and we had to bring in shipbuilders from all over the world to help us get started. We see a turnover in those people. So our focus now is on building a team that is going to stand the test of time. I think despite the pandemic, like I mentioned earlier, we did deliver 2 ships, and we have more coming. And we are seeing the incremental labor hours that it takes to produce ships continue to go down.
Je comprends.
I understand, Mr. Mooney, but for example, with the AOPS, there was an initial order for 5 ships. It was $400 million each. With the first, it makes sense that you're learning, but after that, it should be like a series. The government ordered a 6th, and then it was $800 million for the 6th one. Rather than being less expensive, it was twice as expensive. And recently we learned that out of $2.8 billion, we're at $4.3 billion. So $1.5 billion more when there should have been experience that would have lowered costs. It's a type of issue that doesn't make sense to us. As I was saying earlier, $1.5 billion for a series of ships. Is it just a workforce issue?
So regarding your specific mention of the $800 million for the 6th ship, we should keep in mind that that $800 million was a true-up of the cost that was expected to take to complete all of the 6 ships. So that was not a single ship cost of the $800 million for one ship. Regarding the comment about the total cost number that you put there, that is not a number that I'm familiar with. That may be the total cost that Canada has assigned through all its various aspects of the program, but that is not a number which is familiar to me.
Okay, these are the numbers we received in a report in our files, so that indicating that the government is spending $4.3 billion for the 6 ships. We'll have to find out where that difference comes from. For the surface combatant, here at the committee, we've asked the question to a number of witnesses. The initial number was 56 to 60 billion for the 15 ships. The parliamentary budget officer in Canada said that it will be $77 billion. And nobody in the government can confirm it. At Irving, do you have a better idea currently of the total cost of the 15 ships?
At Irving, we are only responsible for a component of the total cost of the Canadian Surface Combatant Program. We periodically send our projections of our estimates of the cost, but it is focused primarily on the construction of the ship and some of the combat systems. It does not include, for instance, infrastructure. It does not include equipment that is being purchased through a foreign military sales program. It doesn't include training. So there are a lot of costs that are rolled in there that don't fall under Irving's responsibility. In terms of the cost of a 15-ship program, that is a number that is extremely hard to estimate at this point in time. And every nation would perform that calculation differently. At Irving, we really have our focus on what it's going to cost to build the first 3 ships, and those are the estimates that we pull together for the government on a regular basis. So I think it's very difficult.
Quand vous parlez,
You said that periodically you regularly send your estimates. At what frequency is that?
quarterly, parfait. Vous parliez des 3 premiers.
You talked about the first 3 ships. Last week, we received Penchenteri, the French-Italian construction company, and they told us they had made an offer to the government to have 15 ships for a fixed price of $30 billion. The first 3 would be built in Europe, sent to Irving, and then Irving could continue and build the other ships for a fixed price. What do you think of that?
I think I would need to see significantly more detail on how those numbers were come to. I can't comment on numbers that were generated by another company. And we should also point out that the ship that they are providing that price for is a significantly different ship from the Canadian Surface Combatant, does not contain nearly the capability of the CSC, and nor does it contain the customizations necessary that Canada requires for its crews and its missions and all of those things as well. So it would be irresponsible for me to comment on how they came to that number.
And if at any time any of the witnesses feel that there's more that they would like to contribute to an answer, because of time, you're welcome to submit that in writing if you just give that to the clerk, and then we'll distribute that to our members. With that, we'll now go to Mr. Housefather for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much to the witnesses for coming today. I really appreciate your participation. Mr. Mooney, do you agree with the comment that the costs are exponentially greater than all other shipyards across the world in terms of building these ships?
No, I can't agree with that comment because it is very difficult to compare the cost of shipbuilding between one country and another country. There are, different countries apply cost in different ways.
And one of the things that you are doing, right, is starting shipbuilding from essentially scratch and re-establishing a Canadian industry in a way that other countries have continued to build ships over generations, correct? So the costs at the beginning are higher.
That's absolutely correct. And I'd like to say my focus is on improvement and the development of this workforce for the long term. And I'm happy to say that every day we are getting better. We are developing Canadians to be shipbuilders for decades to come. And I think there's great hope in the amount of improvement that we're seeing. And that's why we'd love to have the committee come to the shipyard and see for yourself what we're doing. And please don't ever underestimate the complexity of building ships and, getting all the pieces of steel and outfit to come together into a finished product that's going to last for 30, 40 years and have to protect the sailors inside her. So,
and getting skilled labor to be able to do that. And I know that you're ramping up. We had testimony about programs in Atlantic Canada that allowed people to become skilled workers in terms of the different trades that you use, and you guys are hiring them. So can I ask the question, how has these contracts that you've received from the Government of Canada enhanced the economy of Atlantic Canada?
I gave some numbers in my opening comments, but the actual numbers are over 8,200 jobs that will be created through the combat portion of the National Shipbuilding Strategy. And these are high quality, highly skilled jobs that a person can make a career out of and have a skill that will last a lifetime. I think also that our presence there has contributed economic impact across Canada, not just to Halifax.
Spin-off jobs all over the place, about 20,000 jobs a year created through the National Shipbuilding Strategy. So you've talked a little bit about the challenges that you face, and it's clear that the industry faces challenges during COVID. You have additional challenges because it's starting up a new program. How has the government of Canada been of help in terms of partnership, and what can we do more in terms of assisting you?
Well, I think at the highest level, Canada has stood by us throughout this. The confidence remains. We fully open our books. We fully open our shipyard. We have Canada people representatives on the technical side, on the operational side, on site, nonstop, working with us and watching us every step of the way, encouraging us where they can, criticizing us where necessary. We are on this journey together, the country, the industry, the shipyard, to develop this industry, and we all have to stay focused on the end goal.
And the goal is delivering on time and on budget as best as we can, and we're moving toward that. And I appreciate the work that you guys are doing. Ms. Cianfrocco, I have a question for you. First of all, thank you for your testimony. Thank you for reminding us that moving to a single source, a single department responsible for military procurement is not a panacea. There have been a lot of simplistic testimony before this committee saying that this solution will somehow magically resolve all of the problems that plague defense procurement in Canada. Could you speak a little bit to that issue and why you feel that moving to a single department or a single person responsible is not the be-all and end-all solution, and the challenges that may pose?
Sure. And I'm mindful of the fact that I do have a little bit of a different opinion from one of my member companies at Irving Shipyards, but they I believe are looking at it through an execution lens. I look at it through the lens of the complete procurement system. And one of the challenges that would be faced is the concept of, smashing together 4 or 3 departments either into a single agency or under a single minister. And the easiest way I can describe it is if you're in sort of the manufacturing business, one of the first things you're going to do to make your operations more efficient is you're going to map that process. You're going to map it all in its ugliness, in its inefficiencies, in its overlaps, and then you're going to start to take it apart. Changing who runs that beast and all the parts within it, changing the top does not change the inefficiencies that lie underneath. So the idea that we would take this, in some cases, 200 process or 200 step process in a single department, for example, like D&D, either give it a new minister or blend it with another 200 step process in ISED, and it would magically somehow become more efficient, would be quite remarkable in my point of view. Having done continuous improvement for one company with one boss, we had similar and the same kind of inefficiencies when we didn't actually look at the steps within the process. So that's certainly one aspect that I think is grossly oversimplified. The second thing is, and I've said this to these committees a number of times, most countries have governing foreign policies and they have governing industrial policies.
Thank you,
And
Ms. Thank you, Ms. Cianfrocco. Unfortunately, we had time commitments. We'll now go to Mrs. Vignola for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Mooney. Microphone, please, I have a few technical questions for Irving Shipbuilding. I'll ask them quickly, and you can take a couple of minutes to answer. I was wondering how many hulls and hangars are available for construction for Irving Shipbuilding in the Atlantic? Who are your suppliers of steel, and what are your weekly capacities for cutting steel?
Okay, on the first question was how many hulls and hangars do we have? We have three main sites for construction and in Halifax. Two of them are over in Dartmouth, and they're focused on steel fabrication. And then those parts are brought across the harbor into our main construction hall, which has two areas, an assembly hall and a module hall. And then the completed large modules go out onto the land level. So that is roughly how the construction process works at Irving Shipbuilding. And it was designed with the assistance of a lot of international experts back about 10 years ago. The other questions were related to steel. Sorry, could you please repeat those?
Vos fournisseurs.
Your suppliers.
We purchase our steel through a steel distributor called Stegerstal, and the steel that they provide is sourced from various areas of the world. The steel used in construction for the AOPS ships is a highly specialized steel. We experimented with some steel suppliers we intended at the front end of the program to use steel suppliers in Canada. Unfortunately, due to the special welding limitations and things like that, we had to source from different sources. So most of the steel comes from outside of Canada in the AOPS ships. On the Canadian Surface Combatant ship, that is still under review, but the initial look is that these are also extremely highly complex steel grades and quantities. So we're working closely with BAE in the UK. They're building the ship right now, and we will use similar grades of steel to what they're using. So I'm unable to comment on CSC since it's not yet under construction, but we will do everything we can to maximize Canadian content, of course, on CSC. And then there was a third question about steel.
Les capacités.
Your weekly capacity for cutting steel.
I'll have to get back to you with that exact number. That's just not a number that I keep on the tip of my tongue, I'm afraid. So,
Merci.
but
Thank you. So the construction costs have increased. Mr. Paulus mentioned that. We know there's COVID. Everyone's been affected with supplies, whether it's for natural resource extraction and their transportation, their processing, which would have an impact on procurement costs. That being said, what have you done to try to put a brake on that increase in costs related to COVID? And currently with inflation, what are the impacts of COVID and inflation on costs?
the impact of COVID on cost occurs in two ways in the shipyard. One, it has affected the production hours that it has taken to complete the ship, and that was due to the disruption caused by not having all of the workers we needed on any particular day, any particular week. There were periods of time, even when the shipyard was open, that we suffered 30% absenteeism. So we've gone through a very detailed analysis of what the additional costs were associated with the production inefficiency. It was a study that was conducted by a third party, and that is under review with Canada right now. So there was certainly an impact on the production side. On the material side, the impacts have been significant. And I mentioned the price of steel skyrocketing, so that has certainly affected us. The price of steel has gone up by over 150% since April of 21. The price of copper has gone up by over 100%. So those increases in prices affect not only our the commodities, like the raw material that we use, but it affects the finished products because all of the suppliers are using them. The shipping costs have also been significant for us. Those and all of these costs are on the orders of millions of dollars per ship because the increases have been so significant and so sudden. In terms of what options we have to reduce those costs, on the on the material side, I'm open to ideas on that. It is extremely difficult. We are dependent on our suppliers. All of our suppliers at this point on AOPS are single source. I'm not in a position to change suppliers in most cases. We always do that as part of our process anyway to try to get the cost of material down, but it's not something that I can just instantly do. The material we buy is very highly specialized, and it requires engineering approvals, has to be approved by Canada. So we're in a tight position there. Regarding the productivity,
Thank you, Mr. Mooney. Thank you very much. We'll go to Mr. Johns for 6 minutes.
Well, thanks. I'm going to keep going with the thread from Ms. McNola. Well, thank you first for being here today. And Mr. Paul, who's talked a little bit about the $60 billion that the department had projected the cost to be of the 15 new warships. And the PBO suggested it was going to be more around $77 billion. Given that you've talked about the major challenges because of COVID, it's global supply chains, would you say that we're more looking on the side of the PBO forecast? And this, I'll start with you, Mr. Money, if you could.
Yes, like I mentioned earlier, it's difficult for me to comment on those numbers that are being provided by those because I don't know precisely how they come up with. I don't know exactly what they contain, but I think in a general sense, like I said, so I can't comment on a $77 billion number or a $60 billion number for ships that are not going to be built for 20, 30 years. There are so many factors that go into that. If I knew that, but what I would say is the effects of inflation are real, and they certainly don't help.
Yeah, so what does it look like in terms of overall impacts on inflation right now? You talked about, one product being 100% or more different variations. What is it overall? What are you seeing the increase overall on your part of the projects that are right now being procured by your company?
Are you asking for
an overall,
what would be
certain areas you're seeing? Yeah, that's right.
Increase?
Overall costs increase, labor challenges, all of it.
Yeah, so a good way to compare that would be, we recently have got price estimates from all of our suppliers for AOPS 7 and 8, and we were able to compare those to the prices that we paid for AOPS 1 through 6. So in those cases, the prices have gone up anywhere between 15 and 40%. Than what we purchased for AOP, for 15 to 40% higher on AOP 7 and 8 than what it's going to be for AOPS 1 through 6. Another thing we notice is suppliers give quotes that are only valid for a very short period of time because they're subject to inflation as well, and their sub-suppliers won't give them firm quotes that have price validity. So there is significant price pressure across the supply chain.
Ms. Cianfrani, you talked about boom and bust, and this is something we're hearing a lot at the committee. We've seen this happen before in the history of shipbuilding in Canada. What do we do as a nation to make sure that we use this as an anchor, not just for the National Shipbuilding Strategy, but beyond that, as a nation for shipbuilding? Can you speak about the importance of getting this right in terms of the future of Canada being a shipbuilding nation?
Well, like I mentioned, I think you have done, to some extent, you have done some of the work in creating a specific strategy around shipbuilding called the NSS. And it's almost as though it's a rallying call so that it becomes harder and harder for partisan politics to play out and for subsequent governments to overturn what I think is the goodness that has been started. It sounds a little bit easy to say, we just have to have the willpower to keep going at it, knowing that it is an incredibly complex thing that we're doing. But I think that, like I said, most nations, certainly in the G7, have quite directly articulated industrial and foreign policies. And these are, I would argue, two things that Canada misses that would anchor such a strategy. So, if we had a national industrial policy that talked about the fact that we want to have long-lasting capability in shipbuilding, and then over top of that, we plunk the NSS, which gives us this longevity, and we start to educate ourselves about the fact that it's not simply the initial recapitalization of any type of equipment. It is the tail end of this equipment that will last 50 years and will have billions and billions of dollars of both maintenance, repair, overhaul, and technology insertion, not to mention evolution for our Canadian Armed Forces.
You don't
those
need
are
to-
the principles.
Yeah, great. And you don't need to convince me on that. I'm on board on that. So thank you for that. Now, in terms of the policies, like, we used to have a tariff, 25% tariff, as you recall, on ferries being built outside of Canada. What kind of policies could you suggest would help ensure that we're building ships here in Canada to ensure that we're continuing to build a robust shipbuilding strategy? We know that the Conservatives removed that tariff. Can you speak about policies that might help support shipbuilding in the long run?
Well, I can't speak to the ferry situation. I'm not educated on it per se. There are many types of policy frameworks and mechanisms that are used. We in Canada use, you would be familiar with the industrial and technological benefits policy, which basically for every dollar spent on a federal procurement of a certain level mandates that a dollar is spent here in Canada, which I think is to some extent a very passive policy. Other countries, they have, as I said, an industrial policy or ingrained within them the notion that they will purchase and they will maintain their national security through their defense economics. So the United States, for example, you will never see a fighter plane that does not come out of Lockheed or Boeing, just simply because it is deeply ingrained within the Americans that they will look to home first. So those are some examples of what you can do from a policy framework perspective.
Thank you, Ms. Cianfrani. We'll now go to our second round, and Mr. McCauley for 5 minutes.
Great. Thanks, Mr. Chair. Gentlemen, welcome. A couple of questions for you. We're talking about productivity. How is it at ISI compared to, say, peer countries right now? I've seen anywhere from 1/8 the productivity to 1/4 the productivity at peer country shipyards. Have you done that comparison?
It's very difficult.
And I realize it's difficult. Can you ballpark it, or?
Our productivity is lower than other shipyards in North America who are building ships of similar complexity to what we're doing right now.
How much lower? Again, ballpark. I'm not going to hold you to it. Is it
I think it would
1/2,
vary.
1/5?
It would vary by the shipyard, but it's within 20-30%, for instance, of Bath Iron Works in Maine, for instance, which would be one that was right down the road.
Similar question, but on COVID, how did our peer countries deal with this at their shipbuilding? I've seen, not to take offense, but we hear a lot, this committee, COVID, but when I've contacted or looked at some of our peer countries, they're able to steam through that without 1 million lost work hours, I think you commented. Like how much?
Hours, yeah.
How has it affected other shipyards compared to?
It's been a severe impact on shipyards. I was just in BAE Shipyard in Glasgow last week, and we had very direct discussions about the impacts, and their impacts were not quite as bad as ours, but they were bad. And I think it's probably appropriate to point out here that there was a very risk-averse approach to COVID taken in Nova Scotia, and that had a very direct impact on us.
Okay.
We followed the lead of the medical
appreciate
authorities.
That. Let me just move on. I want to chat about the AOPS a bit. My colleague brought up, it had been reported previously, $400 million per ship. Now, I know not every single one costs that, but it was for the first 5, an average of 400. Then the 6th one came out to be, announced 800 million cost. So my colleague wasn't referring, when he talked about 400 million per ship, he was talking about the average for the first 5 that had been reported. Now it's 800. Now the last 2 for the Coast Guard are now, I think, 750 million a ship. Walk us through, as you're gaining experience, as your productivity is increasing quite dramatically, the cost should be coming down rather dramatically.
Right.
How is it going the other way so dramatically?
Okay, so let's try to get the numbers correct so that we're all speaking on the same, on an equal footing here. So, like I mentioned earlier,
What is the cost? We've been
800
asking for years. We never get a straight answer from anyone. So what is the cost per ship then for the first five?
The approximate cost
For the first five, say.
for the first 6 ships is about $500 million per ship. Now, you have to remember that the first ship contains a significant amount
Oh,
of
yeah. No, I
non-recurring
understand that first one
engineering
may be
costs.
$750
So
and
the
the costs
price
come down. Yeah.
of each ship goes down.
Where did it get reported that the sixth one was 800 million then? And why are
I
these two
was
Coast
not-
Guard ones so
yeah.
high?
I was not here at that time, so my assumption is that it was a 5-ship
What
it was
is-
a contract for
what is the
5 ships
cost
that
for
was
the sixth one,
modified
then?
for a contract for 6 ships,
What is the cost for the sixth one then?
less than 500 million.
And is it accurate then for the Coast Guard then for 750 per ship?
I don't know where that $1.5 billion number came from,
What
but
is it gonna
we
be then?
recently submitted an estimate, and that is not the number that we
What
submitted.
is your estimate, please?
We're in negotiation with the Coast Guard on that right now, but it is nowhere near 1.5.
But you understand where a
So-
lot of these
Yeah.
numbers bounce around because we ask questions, we don't get answers. So what is the estimate then?
Because the estimates we have yet to negotiate the terms and conditions of the contract.
Let's go back from
and
the
the terms
fifth
and
to the
conditions
sixth. Let's go
drive
back
how
to
much
the-
it's going to cost to
Let's
build
go
the
back to
ship.
the fifth to the sixth, understanding the massive increase in productivity. How much is saving from that first ship to the sixth ship? I would think the sixth ship added cost, you're saying it should be around 250, 300. What is that sixth ship added to the contract costing taxpayers?
The total cost of the 6-ship
No, but
contract.
for the added ship, because it was 5, and then one added ship got in.
I
What is
think
the added cost for that?
I think my answer to your question is that the $800 million or whatever number was added to the contract is not the incremental cost of a single ship.
What is
Okay.
incremental for
It-
that
it-
last ship that got added then?
The number that
Ballpark-ish.
we are looking at right now is somewhere between $400 and $450 million for the 6 ship.
Appreciate that. Again,
Thank you.
It's been difficult to get straight answers on that. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll now go to Mr. Baines for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our guests for being here today. My question's to Ms. Cianfrani. What are some of the challenges you've seen to improving the NSS across the shipyard? So my questions are coming from British Columbia, and it's an important part of our marine sector here with the Vancouver shipyard. So what are some issues that you think that they are running into, and how can the federal government help?
Well, I mean, I think I think Vancouver Shipyards isn't much different in terms of the challenges that it's facing from Irving Shipyard. They will be facing escalations for raw materials and services, in some cases due to COVID. Then that impact will be across the board in NSS. I think one of the best things that can be done is for us as a nation to look at, the national defense has an escalator for these types of things. It has contingencies built into the programs. You've probably heard about that. It is unlikely, in my view, that these contingencies would provide enough cover to be able to absorb the kinds of inflationary measures that we're seeing right now. So, in my view, if parliamentarians wanted to help out the two shipyards, and the NSS program in general, you would ask Treasury Board to look very hard at escalators that are outside of the program itself, meaning the program would not absorb the burden of the escalations that we're seeing, especially in terms of inflation, for example.
Okay, and then do you have any suggestions on improving the local economic benefits to Canadian industry as we approach a conclusion in the FFCP project? That's my second
Oh,
question.
you're on planes. I do not have any insight into the bids that were put on the table by the vendors themselves. We stay out of the procurement offers. So I cannot tell what the winning procurement, the soon-to-be negotiated procurement with Lockheed Martin for the F-35 does include in terms of its benefits to Canada. All I can say is that as the federal government negotiates that, we would want to see a maximization of work, whatever it can be, placed into Canada, whether that's on the platform, but particularly in the case of the in-service support and the technology insertion over the life of that program, if it is an available option to us. You would have been aware that in the past, Canada maintained, serviced, and technology upgraded the F-18s that were made by Boeing. There was a lot of transfer of technology put into this country, and that stands to erode without some kind of involvement by Lockheed, which would probably most likely take place during the negotiation period. The government of Canada playing as much of hardball as it possibly can at the time.
Thank you. How much time do I have, Mr. Chair?
He's away, just keep going.
Okay. I'll move on to Irving Shipbuilding. How does Irving support smaller Canadian shipyards and small and medium enterprises through its supply chain? Final question.
In our procurement process, we absolutely give priority to small Canadian companies. So they're and medium-sized Canadian companies. So we use them for our HVAC system installations on the ships. We have a dedicated staff resource who helps us constantly survey the local Canadian market to bring new Canadian suppliers.
Can you give some examples of where they're located?
Mr. Baines, you have 30 seconds just so you're aware.
Sure.
Okay.
Just that, some examples, some of the cities that they may be located in, or areas, regions.
You know what? I'd be happy to give you a detailed breakdown of all of our suppliers across Canada. That's information we have for you, for sure.
Thank you.
But we have all the provinces represented, I can tell you that.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now go to Mrs. Vignola for 2.5 minutes.
Au niveau
Regarding frigates, the choice was made. I'll start over so you can hear. Regarding frigates, the choice was made to build Type 26 frigates. And I was wondering, that decision, was it imposed on Irving by the Department of Defense? Was it a choice by the Department of National Defense?
The answer to your question is yes. The decision was made by the Department of National Defense for the Type 26.
est-ce que vous aviez été
Were you consulted on that topic?
Irving Shipbuilding had the responsibility to run the procurement process for them, but we helped provide the scoring and all that of the various, but we did not have access to the final scoring. Kevin, perhaps you could provide some more detail on that.
Yeah, so Irving assisted to the procurement process, but the requirements, the capabilities expected, the overall scoring, and the expectations and decisions that came from it were all made by Canada. Irving were there to facilitate support and provide advice if asked, but in general, all the issues were Canada's decision. We were there to facilitate and enable.
et parmi
Among the other possibilities, there was the European frigate, the FREM. What would have been the advantage of choosing that one over the Type 26 for the builder? Or the opposite, what is the advantage of Type 26 versus the other one?
It's a very difficult question to answer because no FREM design was offered through the competitive process. There was only an unsolicited bid through Fincantieri, which, as they said last week, didn't meet the requirements that Canada had laid out, so it wasn't compliant, so it was offered outside of that process. FREM wasn't offered through another bidder, so we never got to see what that might have looked like. We only got the bids we got that were reviewed properly through the formal process as laid out through Canada. The FREM offer from Fincantieri was outside of that.
OK. Un témoin ici.
Okay, a witness a few weeks ago told us that it was Irving who had imposed Type 26 on the Government of Canada. What would you respond to that witness?
There was no imposition from the company on Canada. As I said, Canada set the requirements, the capability and the expectations, and the decision lay with Canada. Type 26, modified to meet the needs of CSE, was the successful bidder through the competitive process activity.
Thank you. We'll now go to Mr. Johns for 2.5 minutes.
You talked earlier about the labor market shortage and the challenges around retention and recruitment. Can you speak about how the federal government can support you? Obviously, this is applying to all sectors, doctors, lawyers, even border agents, and at the airports, as you're hearing. It's right across the whole spectrum. Mr. Mooney, can you speak about how Canada can help best support it? Obviously, we've got a housing challenge as well, so we can't just rely on immigration to bring people in to fill those jobs when we don't have housing.
Right. Well, you mentioned immigration right there, so that is certainly one of the biggest areas where we can get help. For instance, speeding up the process. There's a backlog right now that if we would hope that the National Shipbuilding Strategy immigration that we are pursuing will take priority, since it's in the national security interest.
There's a disconnect right now. There's not a housing strategy that's working cohesively with our immigration strategy to ensure that we have housing to accommodate people to fill those jobs. So do you think the federal government needs to work more with a cohesive plan on housing and immigration?
Yeah, I would highly recommend that, particularly in Halifax. We're starting to come into a period of housing shortages, and we need places, affordable housing for our workers to occupy.
Talk about smaller shipyards. I mean, obviously you're a big shipyard. I'm from Port Alberni on the west coast of Vancouver Island, trying to kick off a big floating dry dock because we have huge demand for floating dry dock space on the west coast, and there's a shortage. How can the NSS help support getting small shipyards to be able to fill some of the needs there, and how can that tie in as well? How can the federal government create programs for smaller shipyards to be able to get into the business and participate?
I'll be honest with you. I'm focused on my shipyard.
I bet you are.
I am focusing on delivering ships for Canada.
But do you agree that it's important that we create capacity in the smaller shipyards so that we can continue the robust needs for the larger vessels at the bigger shipyards?
I think anything that increases the shipyard capability, the comments made by my colleague from CADSI, I would agree with those 100%. We need to support the expansion of the maritime industry in Canada. And Irving does that through our value proposition commitments and things like that. So we do try to help, and we are interested.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And we'll now go to Mr. Paul Hoos for 5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question will be for you, Mr. Young. You're the Vice President for the Canadian Service Combatant, is that correct? The Government of Canada paid $800 million for the design of Type 26, or a little bit over. Is that correct?
No, honestly, I don't recognise that number exactly for what.
It's for the design.
The design is still ongoing, so it's not complete. There is there's a whole range of activities under the design contract, not just to design the vessel, but to design the program, to lay out the future plans.
But about budget, you receive $800 million more than that for the design.
But
the number we have actually in the budget.
As the work isn't finished, that's...
Well, okay.
It's an ongoing discussion with the government about as we work our way through this. So I don't recognise the 800 million number.
Okay. On sait actuellement.
We know currently that Irving is in charge of the ship So it's not the government of Canada, it's not another company, it's not Lockheed Martin, it's really Irving responsible for it. Is that correct?
Irving is the prime contractor for the vessel and is responsible for all of the industry participants, so Lockheed Martin and BAE included and all those others. However, we work closely with the government, and most of the key decisions are collaborative activities that finally the decision rests with Canada. We bring recommendations and solutions, and decisions are taken with Canada.
In the whole project, when we're talking about the design, then we talked about armament systems, construction, and then you would be able to have all of the proposals and the costs from different partners, because now what we want to know is how much that project will cost, because nobody's able to answer us. We've asked the question to the government for 2 or 3 years, and as coordinator of this major project, you must have the costs of all of your partners. You must have an idea of the overall cost.
So as my colleague Mr. Mooney said earlier, we provide a quarterly update to government through a shared cost model of our scope, but our scope does not constitute the total scope of the CSC programme, because CSC is the acquisition of a total defence capability, not just the provision of ships and the combat systems within it.
Qui s'en occupe?
Who is responsible for the armament side? Is it the government talking with Lockheed Martin?
So the government provides the ammunition for the vessel, the training, the infrastructure to operate the vessel. So there's a lot more than just...
But the construction, for the systems of ammunition, for the specialized communication systems of Lockheed, it's the government speaking with them for the costs of that for the combatants?
ISI.
Yeah. Okay. Donc, normalement, on devrait avoir...
So we should have an overall idea on your side. You should know how much we're at.
I know we provide regular costs into the government. What they add on to that, what is additional to that, to provide the estimates that they formally provide, which is the number which is in the order of $60 billion, which they've provided publicly. Okay. Our number is below that number, and it's a reasonable difference between it to believe that is a credible number. I don't know all those costs to say that it's the right number.
Okay, donc selon vous...
Okay, so you would say on your side it's a little under that $60 billion. The government has given $60 billion to have some leeway. But despite inflation, despite the costs of steel and materials, that's still a reasonable number?
Yes, because this is a long-term program. Assumptions on inflation and escalation and materials costs are not just as they are today. We're not buying all those things today. They're projected over using data that the government wishes us to use, so it's consistent with their other cost projections.
Merci. Ma dernière question.
My last question. When we see a major project, we saw the issues with labor, the costs associated with materials, inflation, labor. On your side, the contract with the Government of Canada, your profit margin, is it still protected? Is that always protected? Will Irving always make the same profit and it will be taxpayers who will be paying? Is there any risk to you, any risk to Irving, given all of the consequences of this?
So for the construction of the vessels, we have no contract at the moment. There's an umbrella agreement that describes our role, but we have no contract with a fee or a figure or a cost associated with it. That is something that's still in the future to be negotiated. So as part of that, obviously, there will be a discussion around costs and fees, but we're not at that point yet. So
Thank you, Mr. Young. We'll now go to Mrs. Thompson for 5 minutes.
Sorry, thank you. I'd like to actually begin with Ms. Cianfrani, if I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. You referenced COVID in your opening remarks, and my question is, could you speak to the repercussions, if indeed you feel there are repercussions, of the pandemic as we move forward?
So
as it relates to shipbuilding, sorry.
Sorry, yes. So, sorry, I'm getting a lot of feedback. Okay, on shipbuilding, there are two very interesting dynamics with respect to the pandemic. One is because of the stability, the economic stability of continuing to be able to build ships during the pandemic period, hardship or not, to be able to build them, we actually saw statistical growth in the defense sector. So in 2020, the sector, predominantly buoyed by shipbuilding and the ability to continue to build ships, it grew by 2.2 billion in GDP and 13,900 jobs. So that's actually a testament to the fact that when you have something that's economically stable in an environment like a pandemic, which is a snap shock, that it is actually quite good for your economic stability. Now, that being said, when you look at the NSS itself and its costs, I mean, you've heard the shipbuilders say, yes, there are long-term ramifications in terms of labor shortages, in terms of cost escalations that come from, supply chain issues. And we are seeing those not just in the NSS, we are seeing it across the sector in general. I believe business is seeing it across in general. We've heard escalations, for example, of up to, 400% in certain supply chain areas. So there are long-term ramifications. And like I said, it will be very hard, I believe, even though these programs are 10 years, it will be very hard in the short to medium term for these businesses to absorb those kind of losses without some kind of management from a programmatic perspective. So our worry is that we certainly don't want to see the number of ships, for example, get cut in order to accommodate for things like inflation or labor shortages, which increase wages, for example.
And actually, excuse me, following along with that thread and back to a reference earlier on boom and bust, do you see as Canada moves through this shipbuilding strategy that there's a capacity for other global government markets? So in terms of the ability to keep or to maintain a momentum moving forward, looking outside just Canadian shipbuilding needs?
So in general, the defense sector does export between 50 and 60% of its goods. In shipbuilding, it's a bit more challenging because the reality is this ship is fit for purpose for the Canadians, and the design of the ship is from Britain. So, the Type 26 will be sold around the world. There's no question about it. In terms of the skilled labor and the ability for it to generate itself within Canada, yes. And there are certain parts and components within that ship, for example, being done by Lockheed Martin, the combat management system, which I believe will probably become available to the export market and will most likely be sold on the export market, just like the previous generation that's in the Halifax class. So to answer your question, yes, it is twofold: one, internal, and two, external, but not the ship itself, the platform or the hulls. Most likely it will be the guts inside.
Thank you. In my remaining time, I sort of want to throw it to you for completely open space to speak about, coming off some of your opening remarks, how we can continue to build Canada's resilience in the shipbuilding sector, and sort of looking critically at the things that have gone well, the challenges, but just in a very open way. It's your time to continue with your opening comments, because I found it quite interesting.
Well, I think that we in this country, it's almost like we relish procurements that don't go well. And when I look at NSS, there are many, many little projects within these very large projects that are going well. And when I look at shipbuilding, it truly is nation building. 40% of the growth that we saw in this sector came from shipbuilding. It provides significant employment to individuals on both coasts, and Atlantic Canada has greatly benefited from having the shipbuilding rebirth.
Thank you. I apologize, Ms. Cianfrani, but
No, it's okay.
time commitments. And with that, we've now come to the end of our first hour. And I want to thank Irving Shipbuilding for being with us here, as well as Ms. Cianfrani. Ms. Cianfrani, you will be with us in the next hour to answer questions. But because we're going to, as we bring in one more witness on virtual, we will suspend very briefly, and then we will come back quickly. So I'm going to suspend very quickly. Suspend. So everybody, let's get back on time, and I call the meeting back to order. And we're now going to go for our second hour, and unfortunately due to time commitments, and we want to be respectful of time, we are going to do very quickly an introduction. Mr. Aubertin is joined us, as well as Mrs. Cianfrani is with us. Mrs. Cianfrani, you provided us with basically a statement in advance, and we have distributed that to the members. So they already have that in advance. So if you're okay with just taking questions from what you've distributed, then that'll help us in time-wise. And I'll just allow Mr. Aubertin, quickly, if you would do an opening statement, please.
Merci.
Thank you. By way of introduction, what I'd like to tell you is that the Consortium for Research and Innovation in Aerospace in Quebec has existed for 20 years. It was founded by industry members established in Canada for over 75 years. So Tier 1 and others, but also pioneering universities in aerospace. The government of Quebec, from the beginning, has supported CRIAC, the consortium in question here, and our work is to fund collaborative research in aerospace and has been for 20 years. What does this mean? It means connecting universities, colleges, research centers with industrial specialists so they can undertake collaborative research work, benefiting from support from all levels of government to advance technology, develop talent in Canada, and preserve Canada's leadership in aerospace. For 20 years, we've accompanied our members, our partners, in all technology waves in the industry, from the first composites to avionics, more sophisticated fly-by-wire, electronic controls, and more electronic systems on board. And now we fund programs that are largely in new sectors: drones, hybrid electric propulsion, and digital cybersecurity, which is really becoming significant in our portfolio. We're a sectoral group for industrial research in aerospace. That means with every project that we fund, it's an idea from industry first. And then we bring researchers in to develop technologies and talent. Without the initial industry contributions, our programs aren't deployed. So it's really applied research to mature technologies and train the next generations of innovators and engineers in our sector. So for 20 years, this is the work we've been doing. In Canada, 75% of R&D in aerospace is done in Quebec, especially in the Greater Montreal area. But that doesn't mean there aren't other innovative ecosystems elsewhere in Canada that we work very closely with. And innovation in energy, hydrogen, electric, quantum, and so on. These are other ecosystems we work closely with. For 20 years, nearly $300 million in research projects. Most of that funding has gone to developing highly qualified staff, doctorates, postdoctorates. These are specialists who are now in the industry in Canadian universities. They have research chairs in aerospace, in materials, or they're leaders in industry. The network today has 175 members and partners. Of the members, there are about 140 in Quebec, but there are more and more outside of Quebec. So over 40 members outside of Quebec now, in universities, in SMEs, in Tier 1 companies throughout Canada. They're within our network, even though we're based in Quebec. Impacts: over 2,000 graduates of our projects are now in the industry. Licenses transferred to industry that have advanced technology and are now in different motor programs, aviation programs, and onboard systems of all natures, and startups that are thanks to research projects and significant outreach internationally. that international outreach has really led to recognition of CRIAC over the years. It's the ecosystem, it's the intensity of the research work. It's pretty unique to have an ecosystem like this that supports an industry that's everywhere. So I'd now like to draw your attention to 3 important points. On CRIAC, we've been funded by the federal government to manage a second consortium called CARIC
Research and Innovation Consortia pour une période
for a period of 5 years, and we've worked very closely with another consortium for 10 years on green aviation in Canada. We have a wonderful legacy. And regarding the industrial and technological benefits policy, I'd say we have all of the processes, all of the practices, the know-how to mobilize the ecosystem, to create consortiums that fall under this policy with traceability of transactions, traceability for the work, to have those industrial and technological benefits in Canada as the policy sets out. Of course, there are the pillars of the value proposition. You know them in the policy, and I will focus on innovation here. So the multiplying factors that are set out in the policy, which mean that contract holders have the opportunity to have multiplying factors on R&D investments to encourage our technological leadership through contracts in defense and security. So everything is in place to have the full benefits for Canada. Furthermore, Canada doesn't currently, for its leadership and sovereignty, have the social and economic and technological benefits of this policy. We need to recognize major efforts from the industry and all processes. Now, we can only deplore how slow these procurement processes are, and especially the disalignment between the intention of the policy, of the benefits, and the real obligations. For companies when they obtain contracts. So we have 20 years of experience. Major envelopes from these benefits, we've seen few of them. Indirect funding with SMEs, a few supports, but big bangs reflecting the policy, no, we can't count on them currently. So it is recommended to the Government of Canada that more be done more quickly to require and monitor companies that obtain contracts for procurement, that they quickly implement with specialized entities, recognized entities that can ensure traceability as required by ISED. So development projects that are necessary to fulfill contracts and deliver materials, but also so that new technology and know-how can thrive in our country in this industry. To conclude, it's also recommended that the government facilitate an envelope of $49 million in investments in research and development in aerospace as announced in June 2019 by the ISED minister at the time. But the deployment of those funds is still something we're waiting for because of the Strategic Fund for Innovation. The quick implementation of such an investment in research and development for Canada's leadership is something we're still waiting for and isn't in place yet. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Aubertin.
I'll go to questions and start with Mr. Macaulay for 6 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Ms. Kenferani, again, sorry if I'm butchering your name, You commented earlier, do you actually believe that Seaspan or Irving will be able to export ships in the future, considering our cost disadvantage, our capacity issues?
Well, it's not so much their ability to be able to export the ship, it's whether or not Canada would undertake such a Team Canada approach to a ship, and if indeed another nation would want to purchase it with their own customizations. So
considering our costs, our massive cost disadvantages. And the reason, I'm just putting it out there, and I appreciate what you've said, but I don't want to say it's a disservice to Canadians watching or to our report, but I want it to reflect a reality. And is it any sense of reality that another nation is going to, considering our cost disadvantage, our capacity disadvantage, are we actually going to be able to sell ships abroad?
I can't answer that because I'm not another purchasing nation. But
okay, no, that's a fair answer. Thanks. Let me ask you. Appreciate what you were saying earlier. Where does CATSI get its funding from?
We have a membership model, so we get our funding from. Right now, we have about 550 members, industrial partners, and then we get also our funding by running events. So we run the very large trade show called CanSec.
I know that's coming. I know that's coming up soon. The federal government provides grants. I think it was like 600,000 last couple of years, according to the Treasury website. But the members of the NSS would also be contributing members as well, right?
Yes, yes, of course.
Okay, wonderful. I wanted to talk a bit about the ITBs because you brought it up a lot. Like one of the issues that came up with the ITBs was, of course, the famous French fry ITB for Irving's. Do you think that's or brings, I guess, legitimacy to the ITB debate when we allow someone like that to have an offset in a French fry factory? As much as I'm happy it's in Alberta?
Well, it depends how you set up your ITBs. As you heard Mr. Aubertin talk, there are various multipliers for the ITBs that are... the
ITBs are meant, or from a CADC point of view, for technological development in Canada?
There are variations on the ITB. So predominantly, we would like to see direct ITB placed on the actual equipment that is being procured. Secondarily, we would like to see it in innovation, technology, and other research places. And then thirdly, what we call a third tier of ITB, which are less incentivized, meaning these multipliers. So businesses are incented to put their dollars into areas where they get $10 for every one.
No, I understand that. Let me ask you, for your membership, what kind of, are we hampering them then with some of these ITBs? Are we going to, I look at in London, Ontario, we've got General Dynamics building the LAVs there. Are we hampering the ability to create jobs or technologies by saying you need to invest in a food manufacturing plant somewhere? Or, is that a special deal for them? Do we need to be a lot more open or a lot more flexible with our ITBs?
So it depends on the platform, the amount of the ITB that can be direct. So there's a portion of it that is direct on the platform. And we know in the case of light armored vehicles in London, for example, there are over 400 companies in the direct application of building light armored vehicles, which is a significant portion of their industrial and technological benefit piece. Then there would be a piece that we call the indirect piece, which goes into other things. Some of that being social procurement. It could be indigenous procurement. It could be social programming, and it could be things less attractive, like, your French fry manufacturing plant in Alberta.
But sure, address our French fry capability gap. Is it a stumbling block at all for the membership of CADSI dealing with how we set up the ITB regimes? Are some more flexible than others? Because I think a French fry factory is a bit flexible compared to what I think most ITBs are meant for.
Well, that's the thing. So, I mean, it allows a business, the direct and indirect allows the business to basically do its best to bring back that value to the economy. So in some cases, what you're going to find is a piece of technology is already sourced and is largely, let's call it, off the shelf, and the amount of customization is very limited. So the ability for that company to put work right on the platform is quite low, and therefore they would do a lot of indirect work. A good example would be an airplane platform, for example, would have a lot of indirect work versus direct work just simply because it's sourced elsewhere outside of Canada. I would say that members are very split on how ITBs are useful to them. In the case of the shipyards, I think the shipyards have made tremendous use of ITBs. In the case where we are purchasing largely a platform that is made outside of Canada, I believe that a lot of the foreign companies prefer the indirect ITBs because they are not necessarily interested in replacing their sourcing mechanisms, which could be in the United States, for example, with a Canadian firm.
Thank you, Ms. Cian-Pirani. We'll now go to Mr. Kazmierczuk for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to continue to talk about the industrial and technological benefits program, specifically its importance to Quebec Aerospace. And so I have a question for you, Mr. Aubertin. We know, for example, that about 72% of ITB benefits in Quebec go to aerospace, and this is the largest proportion of any region in Canada. And there are over 45 academic institutions and research organizations across Canada that benefit from ITB, including, for example, Polytechnique, Montreal, McGill, and we recently, Lockheed Martin also joined the Institut Quantique at University de Sherbrooke. And that was a $1.3 million investment that was facilitated by the ITB. So I just wanted to ask you, Mr. Aubertin, what does the ITB program mean to Quebec Aerospace, and also how can it be improved as well?
Merci.
Thank you. The ITB policy means a lot for Quebec. We have to recognize that many industrial members are involved in defense and subsectors of defense and security in Canada and in the world. Now, the vast majority of manufacturers and universities that work in our sector here in Quebec focus on civil aviation, the benefits of research, of products, are of benefit to security and defense. So when we look at the industrial and technological benefits policy, the potential can allow universities to have professorships in the long term, and then they can prepare laboratories. So concentrate activity in fields like quantum materials, advanced mechanics, cybersecurity, or heading towards the future of aviation with air taxis and drones. So for a university that has a contract with a company that guarantees a long-term vision, 5-10 years, and it's a game changer for universities. For research centers, small structures associated with technical colleges, these entities also benefit because they can rapidly have infrastructure like robots, automation systems, master that knowledge, and their clients are often SMEs. So there's really a structuring effect for entities and for future clients. So in our ecosystem, we see these transactions that are sustained by different partners, and right now it's piecemeal. And that's why I think if we look at the future, what can we do so that those structuring effects of such a policy with these contracts wouldn't be done in a piecemeal fashion, so that for everyone in the ecosystem, we don't have to spend a lot of time, have a lot of meetings with company A or B, go abroad, come back, and host. There are a lot of transaction costs to obtain consideration from someone who may want to participate in the investment. So that's why I think that established structures, and I'm glad we're talking about ITBs with CATSI as well, with Ms. Sian Farani, because it's really beneficial, direct and indirect, and we need to do more.
Well, thank you very much for that fulsome question. I did want to switch gears really quickly, and this is a question to both of the witnesses. But according to a recent, and this deals with the question of workforce and labor shortages, and according to a recent Aerospace Industries Association survey, only about 24% of workers in aerospace are women, about 8% are black. And the International Aviation Women's Association did a similar survey that found similar results. I'm sure that its situation is not much different here in Canada as well. One of their conclusions of that survey was that, and I quote, "The aviation industry is not sustainable if more than 50% of the population doesn't see aviation as a successful career." So I wanted to ask both of the witnesses, how are your organizations helping to recruit and retain more women in the aerospace sector, and how can Canada help develop, or how can Canada help the aerospace sector develop a more diverse workforce?
So I can take it on a national level. There's three things really that are happening. One is measurement. So you came out with that statistic. Certainly in the defense sector, we, for the first time in 2018, we started to measure the number of women in the defense industry in order to be able to set up inevitably programming that would incentivize women to come into the sector. The second thing is that there is programming and policies. So when we look at the industrial technological benefits programming, indirect benefits could be used, multipliers for indirect benefits, in order to incentivize companies to hire and train women. And we've suggested that the policy could be used to skill up women and you create university programming for that, for incentivizing women to join. And then the third thing is CADSI is actually the parent organization for an organization called WIDS, Women in Defense and Security, which is made up of many, many women in defense and security. And we provide mentorship, professional development, and a community for women in particularly the defense sector, because the numbers in our sector are roughly between 13 to 15% women.
Thank you, Ms. Cianfrani, and I apologize, Mr. Aubertin, but unfortunately we've run out of time. If you can provide that to us in writing to our witnesses and to our clerk, it would be appreciated. I will now go to Mrs. Vignola for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much. Mr. Aubertin, a few weeks ago, the Government of Canada announced that it would go forward with the F-35 from Lockheed Martin. I have two questions on that. That preference for the F-35, did that surprise you? And what did you expect in terms of economic benefits for Quebec regarding labor and expertise in Quebec? What do you expect from that contract with Lockheed Martin? Thank you for your question. No, I wasn't surprised by the choice. The whole process was conducted in such a way that authorities could look at different companies and their proposals over quite some time, over quite a few years. The expectations of such a contract, as mentioned earlier, they could be direct, the direct work of manufacturing and developing the subparts of this plane. In Quebec, we have over 225 SMEs and industrial organizations. We have our universities in our consortium. So directly in terms of work and indirectly for developing skills through training programs for labor, we really believe in transition to sustainable aviation. So reducing our environmental footprint in factories and also reducing greenhouse gases through new technologies, new electric systems for controls and propulsion, and developing suppliers which will create infrastructure. Now, for innovation, research and development, it's a golden opportunity to use the industrial and technological benefits for Quebec and for all of Canada, because we have a lot of collaboration outside of Quebec, and there are members here who have footprints all over. Thank you very much, Mr. Aubertin. I'm going to have to cut you off there. Thank you very much. My next question is a little connected, so you'll have the opportunity to elaborate. A few weeks ago, witnesses explained to us that the partnership between Canada and Lockheed Martin for developing the F-35 allowed for $2 billion in benefits for the aerospace industry in Canada. That's before the contract. That was just for development. Do you agree with that amount? What percentage of benefits would be in Quebec mainly, because we don't have a regional breakdown? Do you think Quebec's expertise in aviation will be used through this contract between Canada and Lockheed Martin? Do you see that in the negotiations to date?
Je ne peux pas me prononcer.
I can't speak to the value for the investment done, that $2 billion for the development. I can say that some of our member SMEs have benefited from direct transactions with Lockheed Martin, and those companies have advanced their technologies and done structuring projects with the CREAC. Do I see positive elements in the negotiations at this point? We're not involved in any way to contribute with Lockheed Martin directly in identifying technological poles, specific capacities, starting centers of excellence in Quebec that would advance things in a portfolio, not with ISET either. The fact that you're not involved to date, does that concern you? Or do you think that's normal given the current state of the process?
Sans dire que
Without saying it's unusual, I would say that it's time tomorrow morning for the work to begin to identify the major kicks, the industrial capacity, the key industrial capabilities targeted by Lockheed Martin, and then the different elements of innovation, the skills for the workforce, and of course the research topics. So artificial intelligence, very sophisticated navigation systems, countermeasures. These are capacities that take time. It takes time to train people on this. It takes time to understand the science, the quantum. So I think it's time, it's urgent. So what I hear is that for now the government hasn't been consulting the aerospace industry enough, especially for fighter jets, NORAD, etc. Is there room for improvement? Is there room for improvement in terms of consultation with the industry? Yes, but with research capacity, innovation, because there's industry and there's also the research and innovation ecosystem that we represent, because we have both industry and the academic world. And that academic world is ready.
Now we'll go to Mr. Johns for 6 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you again, both of you, for taking time to testify here today at this committee. We've heard earlier around the ITBs, and I just think cheaper isn't always better. We've seen infrastructure and defense procured internationally, in Africa and South America, and we see that we have crumbling examples of, cheaper infrastructure than and building here in Canada. So I do want to touch on the ITBs a little bit. Can maybe Ms. Cianfrani, I want to go on a different angle. Can you talk about the critical importance, the value proposition when it comes to the multiplier effect, human rights, environment, and fair wages, and ensuring that we have supply chains and developing national security around procurement and ensuring that we do it here at home in Canada? The benefits, that would be great.
So we used a policy here in Canada that's called an offset policy, which is the ITB value proposition. Like I said, of proposals a certain size or bids of a certain size, you apply this policy, and this is what incentivizes corporations to put supply chain and to put other technologies or consortia, research projects.
Yeah, I understand.
In Canada.
I understand that. I'm just hoping you can underscore the importance of it in terms of economic leakages for our country and opportunities in the long run in terms of development of our manufacturing sector.
Well, like I said, it's critical because if you don't do this, what happens is major platform acquisitions will be sourced from other nations. So, for example, if you think about the NSS, if we just bought the Type 26 from the Brits, we would not be able to maintain, likely, it would not include a maintenance, transfer of technology, or even a build here in Canada. And effectively, we would be hamstrung by another nation getting all the economic benefit. So it is a critical piece because that is the way in which we get work in Canada on things that we don't do in Canada by nature.
I really appreciate your valuable feedback. Mr. O'Byrne, can you talk about in terms of dual-use technology, military and civilian purposes? I just think about, even in my own writing, I've got a company named Colson Aviation. They're doing really important work at fighting forest fires, all around the world. They're not doing it here in Canada, but they've refit their helicopters and their airplanes to fight fires around the world. And do you think that we could do a better job in terms of creating dual purpose with our military equipment? I think about also maybe you could speak a little bit about how things have shifted and our allies. We see Ukraine right now under attack, and the important role that Canada could be playing in helping both on the civilian level as well. So maybe you could speak about that if you could, Mr. O'Byrne.
Thank you. Oui, tout à fait.
Yes, absolutely. I see spillovers from military to civilian and vice versa. An example of a spillover from civilian to military, the Bombardier platform for a number of years has uses by American military. So even if the developments we support in large part in the ecosystem for civilian aviation, well, all of the benefits from that and from the supply chain lead to benefits for the military side. On the military side, absolutely, we see it in space, in different platforms, the robustness, I would say, of the systems developed for the military, and then variations for a civilian. We need to keep in mind, nevertheless, that companies are governed by extremely strict rules for export controls, controlled goods, etc. And so consequently, there will always be some limits connected to military development to civilian.
I was really impressed, Mr. Aubutin, with your strengths and ambitions document part of your presentation that you sent us. And you talked about accelerating the decarbonization of air transport. Can you elaborate how Canada could better support decarbonization, lowering greenhouse gas emissions within your sector, and some of the ambitions that you have and that you're working on?
Très bien, merci. Oui.
Yes, thank you. In the change vector on sustainable aerospace, there's navigation. Aerospace companies work closely with major suppliers of navigation systems, Thales, etc., CMC in Canada. So, navigation, taxiing to departures and landing. So there's a whole optimization. 30% of the reduction in greenhouse gases could be from optimizing navigation. The important aspect for propulsion, whether it's with hydrogen and its variants, or hybrid propulsion, electric. In Canada, we have motorists, a legacy of motorists and Rolls-Royce, Pratt Whitney, Safran, for helicopters, for fixed-wing planes. So we have that capacity because those suppliers are here. And of course, there are device modifications groups that are in Tier 1 and other that work on design and configuration. So the know-how is there, technologically and industrially, and we work with industry, with universities, to accelerate new generations of technology to lead to decarbonization of the sector.
And with that, I'd like to thank the witnesses for your testimony today and bearing with us as we went over. You were supposed to be done by 5:30, and we're at 6 o'clock. So I appreciate you bearing with us for all this time and answering our questions. If you feel that there is something that you might have liked to add to your testimony, by all means, please submit that to the clerk, and we will distribute that as well to all of committee members. So with that said, Mrs. Cianfrani and Mr. Aubutin, thank you very much for being with us. And I'd like to thank our interpreters and our technicians for all the work you've done in bearing the extra half hour. Thank you, as well as to our analysts and our clerk. And as many of our committee members can see, that Miriam Mrs. Burke is with us now for part-time when Paul can't be with us. So with that said, I declare the meeting adjourned.
Thank you for having me.